I'm Owen Fitzgerald and welcome to the Fit Stop podcast. We are 2 races in to the Formula 1 season, and some might say that the McLaren dominance might be getting a bit boring. It is back-to-back wins. Lando Norris in Australia for round number 1 and Oscar Piastri making up for his performance and skidding out of the race when he was in P2 in Australia. And unfortunately, we started off the Chinese Grand Prix with the sad news that team owner Eddie Jordan, entrepreneur, broadcaster, podcaster, messer and legend, sadly passed away. Eddie was suffering from cancer, and unfortunately, as we know, not everyone survives the cancer treatment, and that it takes lives, and it takes lives so quickly. And someone who was full of energy and full of enthusiasm and mischief has been taken from us. I won't lie in saying that it has hit me hard. Normally the death of a celebrity or someone that I follow doesn't really affect me, but for someone I haven't met, I was very upset, and I still find this hard to talk about, but I'm not going to do any crocodile tears or look for likes, but I am quite upset about it. And I never thought that someone I didn't know would affect me in this way. But growing up, Jordan Formula 1 was the team that I loved because they were Irish. We had Formula 1 on RT television at the time with Peter Collins and David Kennedy. The yellow cars, I had the yellow jackets in school, I had the yellow hats. I met my best friend Kieran because I was wearing a Formula 1 jacket, and I was just obsessed with the Jordan Formula 1 team. I'll share it on my social media again soon, but I did apply for work experience in Jordan when I was younger, and I got a rejection letter back, and I am definitely now going to frame that. Eddie Jordan was one of the people that I wanted to meet in Formula 1. He was the one person I wanted to interview for my podcast, and it was only something that I was thinking about recently because I joined the Formula for Success podcast, and I was actually on the live recording with David Coulthard. Eddie Jordan was on it and Mark Webber was on it, so that's the closest that I got to EJ, and I think that recording was back in September or October of last year. So I was looking at getting Eddie Jordan on because that was the one person that I always wanted to interview. But look, sometimes things don't happen. He was a bank teller, he was a carpet salesman, he was a second-hand car salesman, he did a bit of racing himself, got to Formula 3, was a good racing driver, hurt himself a few times, but I think he learned that maybe the money was in managing the team. He set up his own team. He had the likes of Johnny Herbert, John Lacey, Martin Brundle, Eddie Irvine, and so many more. And I think Eddie found the opportunity to make money out of drivers, and I think he used to say to drivers, you owe me and I own you, and made the move to Formula 1. We all know that iconic Jordan in 1991, the 7-Up and green car, bringing Michael Schumacher into the sport. They could have won in their first year of Formula 1. It was always the little guys, the little team that punched above its weight. A lot of team principals and other teams didn't like Jordan because they didn't like the playful attitude, the models sitting on the car with no clothes on, the playful Irishness and the drinking and the crack. You know, Eddie knew it was an entertainment business. It wasn't only a sport. People needed to be entertained, and Eddie Jordan knew how to entertain people. And coming from the stories I'm seeing online, and he was just someone you knew by looking at him. He was a messer. But underneath all that was a really strong businessman, a family man, and to Marie and all his kids, they have lost someone very, very special. He brought Adrian Newey to Aston Martin. That was the last deal that Eddie did. He's already making deals up in heaven and playing spoons, but he made a deal to get Adrian Newey to Aston Martin, a team that he set up, which started as Jordan Grand Prix. There's still some bits in the wall in there that are Jordan. A lot of the mechanics and crew still work there, would say they work at Jordan's because it was the old Jordan factory. It's become an absolutely amazing facility now, and the DNA of Eddie Jordan, I think, will always be in that factory out in Silverstone and within Aston Martin as well. He's someone we're going to miss from a punditry point of view. He wasn't afraid to say it as it was, and he was just a great entertainer. We're just going to miss him, and I'm going to miss just listening to him and his views on young drivers as well. He was all, remember him giving out a few years ago. Last season we had no rookie drivers, and then they all started coming in halfway through the season. But he loved his Formula One. He loved life. He loved drumming. He loved music. He loved a pint. He loved rugby. He loved Formula One. He was a family man, and he's going to be sorely missed. So rest in peace to the legend that is Eddie Jordan. And let's take a look at the first 2 races of the Formula One season. Welcome back to the Fit Stop podcast with BYD Limerick and Lions Motor Group, and let's take a look at the Formula One season. It is back. We waited so long and we've had 2 races back to back, and it's been an interesting start to the season. Let's take a look at the standings from the Australian Grand Prix, and it was a McLaren win for Lando Norris starting his championship fight. And I feel with Lando Norris that it's constantly, if he's not on pole, if he's not winning, the media are like, oh, you're not in pole, you're not winning. He's not going to win every race. He's not going to do a Max Verstappen on it. But he started off very good, strong in Australia and strong in the wet as well. And I think that was the key to see Lando Norris do well and the McLaren car to do well in changeable conditions. And as we've seen from the Chinese Grand Prix as well, it's a car that can work in any circuit, any tyre temperature, any weather temperature as well. So really good start to the season with Lando Norris to get that pole position and to get that win. Second place for Max Verstappen. The car is not where it needs to be, but Max is putting it where he can. And at the Australian Grand Prix, he was there or thereabouts, wasn't fast enough to win, but, you know, probably would have finished third if it wasn't for Piastri. So finished second there. George Russell doing well to take over the lead from Lewis Hamilton. Third place, kind of just forgotten about driver, but he's doing really great in qualifying and in the race, and he's kind of out in his own in no man's land, but still putting in a very good performance for Mercedes. Antonelli got moved up to 4th place. Difficult session for him in practice and qualifying, but a really good race from him in really tricky conditions, dry and wet and dry and wet again, and especially towards the end of the Grand Prix. So Kimi Antonelli proving, you know, why he should be in Formula One. Yes, he's still got some learning to do, but there's loads of potential out of him, the future of Formula One. Albon will be delighted getting Williams on board. 5th place, not a great weekend for Carlos Sainz to go out early under the safety car as well, but really good solid points for Williams, a team that is looking very strong for this year. Stroll is starting off very well. 6th place for him in Australia. We know Stroll does very well in the wet conditions, so well done to Lance. Started off the season very, very strong. Hulkenberg for Sauber, what a performance from him, and that'll show you that, you know, in races like Australia, where the temperatures and the rain and the safety cars and there's crashes, someone like Nico Hulkenberg will pick up points, and that is massive for Sauber, because I don't see them picking up many points in Formula 1 this season, but races, crazy races like that, you'll see them pick up points, so he'll be delighted with his experience. Into 7th place, disappointing weekend for Ferrari, who looked off the pace and, you know, tried to maybe risk staying out on the hard tyres, but ultimately they had to pit in the end. 8th place for Charles Leclerc. Piastri, it was a strong home Grand Prix for him, and very simply just got caught out in the weather conditions. It can happen to any Formula 1 driver. He got stuck in the grass, he eventually reversed it and still managed to finish P9. You know, not great for him at his home race or the first race of the season, but he proved that he was able to race up there with his teammates. So fair play to Piastri for getting back into the points, and it was a good weekend until himself and Lando Norris went off in the rain. And Lewis Hamilton finishing in 10th place, his first race with Ferrari. Not the best weekend from Hamilton, but not far off his teammate either. Ferrari with much to do, and we'll have a talk about what happened to Ferrari in the Chinese Grand Prix. Gasly in 11th, a lot of work to do for Alpine. Tsunoda in 12th, doing better than Liam Lawson, just saying. We're going to get into that. Ocon's first race for Haas in 13th. Behrman in 14th. Tough weekend for Behrman. Crashed a lot, didn't get some running, didn't get running in qualifying. So for him just to finish the race and to learn about the car, I think was important for him. Liam Lawson, 15th. We're going to get on to Liam Lawson and what's happening with him when we take a look at the Grand Prix the weekend. Really disappointing weekend and a hard debut for him in Australia. Bartoletto as well, difficult weekend for him, and of course he did crash out in 16th. Alonso, rarely do we see Alonso crash in the Aston Martin, finish in 17th. Carlos Sainz in 18th, who unfortunately went out underneath the safety car. Jack Doohan, not a great start to his career and not a great home race for him in 19th place. And Hadjar didn't even make the start, barely got around the first corner. He was crying, and I have to say, Lewis Hamilton's dad, Anthony, what a gentleman, what a legend, a man with a lot of experience, and he knows the highs and lows of Formula 1, but Hadjar was really upset not to make the start. Helmut Marko said it was embarrassing and pretty much said that sportsmen and men shouldn't cry. But look, let your emotions out, Hadjar. It's 2025, my son. He was just disappointed. It was a great weekend. It was a great Formula 1 opener. It was one of those races that was unpredictable. Things went wrong. There were safety cars, but McLaren showed to be very strong. Max Verstappen off the pace, but showing how Max Verstappen can get everything out of that difficult Red Bull car. And Williams looking strong as well, and Ferrari with work to do. Heading on to this weekend, Piastri bounced back. Well done to Lewis Hamilton, pole and a sprint race. It just suited him, the tyres, the temperatures, everything suited the sprint race. I did think when it came to the main race that they would struggle, and Ferrari did struggle this weekend. We'll get into it, but Piastri bounced back, pole position and the win. An amazing win for him, and he's so relaxed about it. His radio messages, he is so relaxed. Kind of reminds me of like Mika Hakkinen. He's so relaxed. So 25 points in the bag for him to start his championship campaign, and he'll be wooing those points that he lost in Australia. But no doubt this car is going to be fast every weekend. Lando Norris in second. It's amazing how a Formula 1 car can slow itself down by just lifting your foot off the accelerator, and you might just say, well, that's a normal thing, but he had no brakes. He barely had any brakes left. Lando no brakes, they were calling him, and George Russell didn't even manage to catch him. So that'll show you how Lando's comfortable with the car, and how McLaren managed in the last few laps, 9 seconds off Piastri, to keep that car from not retiring. George Russell again, third place. Just another solid weekend for Russell. Good performance in qualifying, good performance in the race. He's not that noticeable on the track because the cameras don't seem to show him, because he's just kind of in no man's land. But really good performance from George Russell. Now, okay, we did see him on the television. We did see some overtakes, but you kind of just forget he's there, or maybe that's just me. But he managed to get himself on the podium again, and Mercedes showing that they've got pace, they've got improvements. They're not quite, where they need to be, but it's only the start of the season. We saw Red Bull dominated the first half with Max Verstappen, and we saw what happened with McLaren coming back. Do not write out anyone yet in the championship. Not Red Bull, not Ferrari, not Mercedes. They are all well able to catch up. So let's see what happens. Fourth place for Verstappen. It's the best he could do. It's the best he could do this weekend to get fourth place out of that car. We'll talk about his teammate in a few minutes, but Max got the best and got the most out of the car. And at that track, unfortunately for him, it was a fourth position. Ocon will be absolutely delighted. Points in the bag for Haas, and Haas will be delighted in the Constructors' Championship due to obviously some disqualifications, but he sees himself up to fifth place, and I think that's a weekend that he needed after not scoring points in Australia. So well done to Ocon. He's the Frenchman. He's first Formula 1 points for his new team. Haas in fifth place. Antonelli in sixth place as well. Antonelli needs to work on his qualifying performance, and I think if Antonelli gets qualifying right, he'll be strong in the race. He's got good race pace and good overtaking as well, and he's proven that in the last two races. But just for him to get the car higher up the grid in qualifying, and that's I think where Toto and Bono and everyone's going to have to work with him, is getting him higher up on the Formula 1 grid for the start of the race. And no doubt, I think as the races go, he's going to prove to be very well. But from the rookie's point of view, he's absolutely acing it as he can. Albon and Williams again in the points, 7th place. They have more points now than they did in the whole Formula 1 season of last year. Williams, I think there's something like 17 points now, and that's all they scored last year. So look, it's strong from Williams, and it's more performance, and race by race I think we're going to see Williams go up the grade. So well done to Albon. Behrman will be delighted. Good solid weekend for him. Tricky one in Australia, getting points on the board. Fantastic. 8th place for Ollie Behrman. Lance Stroll, 9th place, bagging himself some 2 points. He did have the help of the disqualifications, but hey, there we go. Lance Stroll has been consistent. The Aston Martin car really wasn't at the races, let's call it, this weekend off the pace. So he was there or thereabouts, managed to get himself 9th place. So nobody's slagging Aston Martin and Lance Stroll at the moment. Carlos Sainz in 10th did struggle this weekend, very much off the pace and not understanding why. But James Vowles was talking to him on the radio. It's like, we can work on this, we can do this. But look, he's got his first points for Williams. He's got a point. It's something on the board. It's a bit of motivation, and I think it's the team that, give it a few races time, will be competing more for points, and maybe a team that could be fighting for a championship or podiums in 2026. I think with someone like James Vowles and the team that they have, why not? Hadjar 11th place, Lawson in 12th place, and Lawson starting from the pit lane after qualifying last. Rumours are that Lawson will not be racing for Red Bull in Suzuka, and that they'll be putting Yuki Tsunoda in the car to see how he gets on. I would give him one more race, or give him half a dozen races, really. Yes, so half a dozen. Give him 3. He knows the track in Suzuka. He's raced there many times. He's performed well there. I think he's won there in the past as well. So I think give him another race and see how he gets on. It'll show you that all the problems Perez had, Lawson's also having as well. Is he not getting the support? Is the car built for Max? And I know they talk about the front end of the car, and it suits Max more than anyone else. Clearly the car is made for Max. So it'll be interesting to see Lawson. The motivation's not there. The speed is not there. He just can't get the speed out of the car. Can't work on the tyres. So, it's a mix of everything. And I feel sorry for Liam. And that second seat is cursed. From your Albons to your Gaslys to your Perez to anyone that has raced as teammate against Max Verstappen. Let's see what they're going to do. I think give Lawson another weekend and then call it. Maybe swap them. But you'll see, like even Max said that like the RB car would be easier to drive than the Red Bull car. I'd say if you put Lawson back into the RB car, he'll be scoring points along with Hadjar. He's just not getting, just all the effort Red Bull have put in to get him into the car, it's not paying off. And I knew he'd struggle, but I didn't think he'd struggle this much. And you have to feel sorry for him because, he was tipped as being one of the next superstars in Formula 1, and to go into such a big team like Red Bull that's won so much in his time with Vettel and Max Verstappen. So I think give him one race, but then again it's Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. We'll see what happens there. That is one story to keep an eye on. Doan, bad weekend again. He finished 13th place, but just inconsistent. Got himself a penalty, 10-second penalty, few incidents, few spins. And I think just Alpine in general have a lot of work to do. Bartoletto in 14th and Nico Hulkenberg in 15th. Watch the onboards. It's a green tractor. It turns like a tractor. It drives like a tractor. And I think they'll be so happy that Nico got the points in Australia, because I can't see Sauber getting points unless it's a crazy race like Australia and there's crashes and safety cars and weather, or something mad happens in Monaco. I think that's the only time we'll see Sauber. That car just looks absolutely awful. Tsunoda had a front wing damage, and I still don't know why or how it happened, and he was questioning that also. But he was showing strong pace over the weekend and in qualifying. It just didn't go his way in the race the weekend. But Tsunoda showing why he should be in the Red Bull if Lawson's not in it next weekend. So the next Grand Prix 2 weekends time, if somebody is not... If somebody has to replace Lawson, it has to be Yuki. Give Yuki a go and see how he gets on. You can always just swap them. You can just keep swapping the drivers and see how they get on. Fernando Alonso has done like 33 laps in 2 races. Retired with a crash and retired with brake problems and brake failure in the Chinese Grand Prix. So disappointing start for Fernando Alonso in this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc did not finish in 18th because he got disqualified. Lewis Hamilton also got disqualified, and so did the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. So Lewis Hamilton, he's plank wear, and I'm just going to show you this. It's very rare I take out props. There is pretty much why Lewis Hamilton was disqualified. The wear on his plank, the plank underneath the car. The team just got it slightly wrong. That's the margins in Formula 1. 0.005 mils. Like, that's just the way Formula 1 works. Charles' car was underweight, and so was Alpine as well of Pierre Gasly. Once the fuel samples were taken and the fuels were taken out of the car, and the car was underweight, and if you're underweight it's seen as a performance gain. Charles was on a 1-stop, so I think a lot of the tyre wear, because the front wing they were able to put back on, because you can put, so when it goes into Parc Fermé and it goes to be checked and scrutineered, you can change a front wing. that wouldn't have made any difference. And I think something that happened to George Russell, was it the Belgian Grand Prix? He was disqualified. So I think the tyre wear might have had an effect on that. It was a lighter car. Could he have picked up more rubber? Could they put a bit more rubber on the tyres? Very disappointing for Ferrari. And a difficult weekend, even though they had a good, sprint race with Lewis over the weekend. They have struggled with qualifying. They have struggled in the race as well. And that Ferrari just doesn't seem to have the pace. So a lot of work to do for the Scuderia team, and a lot of people joking Ferrari back to their old ways. But we've seen these disqualifications happen before in Formula 1. We've seen it with George Russell last year. It can happen. It's the fine margins. The amount of work they have to put into these Formula 1 cars is absolutely insane to make sure they pass all regulations. So, a little bit of a hiccup for Ferrari. But look, they'll just have to come back strong in Suzuka. As I said, the season is only young. The McLaren dominance could get boring for fans will be the headline. But McLaren are the team that are out in the lead, and they need to get as much points in the Constructors and Drivers' Championship Championships now while they can. Because if Formula 1 starts getting close and we go into these weekends where it looks like anyone could win, they need to be ahead of them, and they need to be picking up points and picking up podiums where they can. So as we head into the next Grand Prix, we lost our legend Eddie Jordan, and we've seen that McLaren continue to be the team to beat. Max Verstappen's thereabout. His teammate could be replaced, and Ferrari are having a difficult start to the season, and Williams look like they're improving, and Lance Stroll having some good performance as well. That is my takeaway from the last two Grand Prix. Watch out for McLaren. Let's see about Suzuka. It's an old school track, lots of elevations, lots of great turns. It's super fast as well, and you know what, the weather can be a bit of a mix in Suzuka. It's on earlier during the year, so the weather should be better. There should be no typhoons, but you never know. The weather can be unpredictable there as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Fitstop podcast with BYD in Limerick and Lyons Motor Group. Head into them in Limerick if you want to take a look at any of the cars they have at Lyons in Limerick. And of course, the BYD electric and plug-in hybrid as well. Car, they have the BYD Seal U. That's a 1.5 petrol plug-in hybrid as well. So call into Dara and the guys for that. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and we'll be back after the Suzuka Grand Prix as Formula 1 heads to Japan.